Commander Jake Martinez stared at the glowing screen in front of him. The message had arrived 3 hours ago, and he still could not believe what he was reading. His hand shook slightly as he pressed the communication button on his desk. "Captain Brooks, please report to my office immediately," he said into the microphone. His voice sounded calm, but inside he felt anything but calm. The Hughes Guardian was humanity's most advanced space station, floating silently in orbit around Earth. For 20 years, Jake had commanded this station, watching for threats from space. He had always wondered if aliens existed somewhere in the Futuverse galaxy. Today, he got his answer. Captain Lisa Brooks knocked on his door and entered without waiting for permission. She was Earth's best expert on alien life, though until today, she had only studied theories and possibilities. Her blonde hair was tied back in a neat ponytail, and her blue eyes showed the same excitement and worry that Jake felt. "Sir, the message came from beyond our solar system," she said, sitting down across from his desk. The translation software worked perfectly. They speak to us in perfect English. Jake nodded and turned his screen toward her. "Read it again, Lisa. I want to make sure I understand this correctly." Lisa read the message aloud. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Ambassador Zethka of the Vrulian Empire, speaking for the Galactic Council. We bring urgent news. The Korthik swarm has destroyed 17 worlds in the past 10 years. They are moving toward your sector of space. We estimate they will reach Earth in 6 months." She looked up from the screen. "Sir, they want to help us. But they also say that no one has ever defeated the Korthik in battle." Jake stood up and walked to the large window that showed Earth spinning slowly below them. The blue and green planet looked so peaceful from here. It was hard to imagine that somewhere in space, a deadly enemy was heading their way. "Tell me about these Korthik," Jake said without turning around. Lisa opened her tablet and began reading her notes. "According to the message, they are like giant insects that work together as one mind. They travel in huge ships made of living material. When they attack a planet, they send millions of soldiers at once. They eat everything they find and use it to make more soldiers." "How big are these ships?" Jake asked. "The message says each ship is as big as a small moon, and they travel in groups of thousands." Jake turned around to face her. His weathered face showed the strain of command, but his eyes were still sharp and determined. "What happened to the other 17 worlds?" "All destroyed. The aliens who lived there either died fighting or escaped to other planets. The Council says the longest anyone held out was 12 days. Most planets fell in less than a week." Jake sat back down and pressed another button on his desk. "Get me Admiral Walker on the secure line. Emergency priority." Within minutes, Admiral Chris Walker's face appeared on the screen. The older man had gray hair and scars on his face from his years as a Marine before joining the space fleet. He looked tired, but alert. "Jake, I got your message about alien contact. Is this real?" "Very real, sir. We have a big problem heading our way." Jake quickly explained about the Korthik and the warning from the Galactic Council. Admiral Walker was quiet for a long moment. 6 months to prepare for an enemy that has never been defeated. How many ships do we have that can fight in space?" 43 combat vessels, sir. Plus the orbital defense platforms around Earth and Mars. Against thousands of moon-sized ships. Admiral Walker rubbed his forehead. "What does this Galactic Council suggest we do?" Captain Brooks leaned forward. "They offer 2 choices, sir. They can help evacuate our population to safe worlds far from here. Or they can give us weapons and shields to help us fight." "Have any of their weapons stopped the Korthik before?" "No, sir. Every world that tried to fight used their best technology and tactics. None of it worked." Admiral Walker was quiet again. Jake could see him thinking through the problem. Finally, the Admiral spoke. Set up a meeting with the Defense Council. Include General Davis, Dr. Johnson, and Colonel Adams. We need to hear all our options. Sir, Jake said carefully, the aliens seem to think fighting is hopeless. They recommend evacuation. Maybe it is hopeless, Admiral Walker replied. But I want to hear what our people think before we make any decisions. How long before this Ambassador Zethka expects an answer? They want to know in 3 days, sir. Then we meet tomorrow morning. Jake, I want you and Captain Brooks there. Bring all the data about these Korthik. The screen went dark, leaving Jake and Lisa alone in the office. Outside the window, Earth continued its slow rotation, unaware that its fate would be decided in the next few days. Lisa, what do you think? Jake asked. Should we evacuate or fight? Lisa stood up and walked to the window. Jake, I have studied alien life for 15 years. I always imagined that when we finally met aliens, they would be peaceful explorers like us. I never imagined they would be trying to save us from something even worse. That does not answer my question. Lisa turned back to face him. The logical choice is evacuation. These Korthik have destroyed 17 civilizations. Some of those civilizations were thousands of years more advanced than us. If they could not win, how can we? But humans have something that maybe these other aliens did not have. We have been fighting wars against each other for thousands of years. We know how to fight when we are outnumbered. We know how to fight when the enemy is stronger. Maybe that experience will help us. Jake nodded slowly. Or maybe it will just make our defeat more expensive. Lisa smiled for the first time since entering his office. There is only one way to find out, sir. Jake looked out the window one more time at the peaceful blue planet below. Tomorrow, they would decide whether humanity would run from the greatest threat it had ever faced, or stand and fight against impossible odds. Either way, life as they knew it was about to change forever. The decision had been made. Humanity would not run. They would stand and fight, even if every other alien race thought they were crazy. Colonel Kate Miller stood on the command deck of Orbital Platform 7, watching her engineers work. The platform had been a simple research station just 2 weeks ago. Now it bristled with alien weapons that the Galactic Council had given them. But the weapons looked nothing like what the aliens had originally designed. Kate, are you sure about these modifications? Asked Dr. Ben Clark, the chief engineer. His hands were covered in grease and his hair stuck up in odd directions. He had not slept much in the past week. Kate pointed to the massive gun barrel that now extended from the platform's main section. Ben, the aliens built these weapons to fire in straight lines at enemy ships. But what if the enemy ships move? What if they dodge? That is why they have tracking systems, Ben replied, wiping his hands on a dirty cloth. Their tracking systems failed against the Korthik 17 times, Kate said firmly. So we build guns that can fire in multiple directions at once. We build guns that can curve their shots around obstacles. We build guns that do things the Korthik have never seen before. Ben looked worried. The alien advisors say our modifications might make the weapons explode. Kate smiled grimly. Then we put the weapons on remote platforms. If they explode, we use the explosion as another weapon. Across the solar system on Mars, Major Tony Garcia was having his own problems with alien advisors. The tall, gray-skinned creature named Veltoth watched human soldiers practice with obvious horror. Your warriors use primitive chemical explosives, Veltoth said through his translation device. Why do they not use energy weapons like civilized species? Tony gestured toward his soldiers, who were setting up machine gun positions behind concrete barriers. Because energy weapons have limited power sources. These bullets will keep firing as long as we have ammunition. But energy shields can stop primitive projectiles easily. Can they stop 10,000 projectiles fired at the same time? Tony asked. Can they stop projectiles mixed with explosive shells, poison gas, and electromagnetic pulse weapons? Veltoth made a sound that the translator could not convert. Your species fights like savage animals. Tony's expression hardened. Every other species you sent against the Korthik fought like civilized beings. How did that work out for them? Meanwhile, in Earth's largest laboratory, Dr. Helen Price was making discoveries that worried her. She had spent days studying the battle reports from the 17 destroyed worlds. Every single civilization had used similar defensive strategies. Captain Brown, look at this, she called across the lab. Rick Brown was inspecting the new human-alien hybrid ships that were being built in the orbital shipyards. Rick walked over to her computer screen. What did you find, Helen? Every species that fought the Korthik used the same basic plan. Long-range energy weapons, defensive shields, and organized fleet formations. The Korthik learned to counter all of these tactics, so we need different tactics. Helen nodded. But look at this. 3 of the civilizations were much more advanced than us. They had weapons that could destroy entire moons. They had shields that could stop any attack. They had computer systems that could calculate perfect battle strategies. Rick frowned. And they still lost? They lost because they were predictable. Their advanced computers calculated the best possible strategies, so they all fought the same way. The Korthik learned to beat the best possible strategies. What are you suggesting? Helen turned to face him. Maybe the best strategy is not to have a strategy. Maybe we need to fight in ways that even we cannot predict. In the orbital shipyards above Earth, the alien advisors were having nervous breakdowns. The ships that humans were building violated every rule of space combat they knew. Ambassador Zefka floated in his environmental suit, watching human workers install weapons on a ship that was barely large enough to hold them. Engineer Clark. This vessel cannot possibly survive combat. It has no armor, minimal shields, and too many weapons for its power system. Ben Clark, who had been working on the orbital platforms just hours before, grinned at the ambassador. You are right. This ship will probably be destroyed in the first battle. Then why build it? Because it will take several enemy ships with it. And while the enemy is dealing with this ship, 10 more just like it will attack from different directions. Zefka's tentacles waved in confusion. But you will lose all your ships. We will lose all of these ships, Ben corrected. But we are building them fast and cheap. For every ship we lose, we can build 3 more. Can the Korthik do the same? General Nancy White was coordinating with resistance fighters on worlds that the Korthik had already attacked. Most of the population on these worlds was dead or had escaped. But some people had stayed behind to fight guerrilla wars against the invaders. The holographic image of resistance leader Krixna flickered on Nancy's screen. The alien looked tired, and his blue skin was marked with scars from months of fighting. General White, your people ask strange questions, Krixna said. Why do you want to know about sewer systems and subway tunnels? Nancy smiled. Because that is where you can hurt the Korthik the most. They expect you to fight them in open space or on the surface of planets. They do not expect you to attack from underground. Underground fighting is dishonorable. Civilized species do not hide like rodents. Civilized species are extinct, Nancy replied bluntly. Rodents are still alive. Krixna was quiet for a moment. You truly intend to fight the Korthik using these primitive methods? We intend to fight the Korthik using every method we can think of, and several methods we have not thought of yet. Back on Orbital Platform 7, Kate Miller received a communication from Admiral Walker. The message was simple and direct. Colonel Miller, You have 4 months to turn our defense platforms into something the galaxy has never seen before. Make them unpredictable. Make them dangerous. Make them human. Kate looked out at the space around Earth. Dozens of platforms were being modified. Hundreds of ships were being built. And thousands of soldiers were training with weapons and tactics that made their alien advisors nervous. She pressed the communication button and sent a reply to Admiral Walker. Sir, the platforms will be ready, but I cannot promise they will work the way we expect them to. Good, came the Admiral's reply. If we cannot predict how they will work, then neither can the enemy. Kate turned back to her engineers, who were installing weapons that could fire backwards, sideways, and in spirals. The alien advisors had given up trying to understand human modifications and were simply taking notes for their own governments. Ben, Kate called out, what is the status on the suicide drone project? Ben looked up from a control panel that sparked occasionally. We have converted 300 civilian spacecraft into remote-controlled bombs. They look like normal cargo ships until they get close to enemy vessels. And the decoy platforms? 50 fake defense platforms that look identical to the real ones. They transmit false energy signatures and will explode when the enemy tries to capture them. Kate nodded with satisfaction. The Korthak expected to fight an organized, predictable enemy using standard galactic warfare tactics. Instead, they would face humans who had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of creative destruction. She just hoped it would be enough. The alarm bells rang throughout the solar system at exactly 0347 hours. Commander Alex Thompson was already awake, staring at the long-range sensors from the bridge of his destroyer, the U.S. Razor. He had been expecting this moment for 4 months, but seeing it happen still made his heart race. Sir, we have contact, reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the sensor station. Multiple large objects dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Alex moved to the main display screen. What he saw made his stomach drop. The Korthak fleet was even larger than the reports had suggested. Hundreds of massive bioships, each one the size of a small moon, hung in space like a dark cloud. They pulsed with organic lights and seemed to breathe like living creatures. Communications. Get me Admiral Rodriguez immediately, Alex ordered. Admiral Mary Rodriguez appeared on the screen within seconds. She was aboard the U.S. Defiance, humanity's largest warship, positioned near Jupiter with the main battle fleet. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed the same fear that Alex felt. Alex, I see them too. Are your ships ready? Ready as we will ever be, Admiral. My squadron is in position near the asteroid belt. We will hit them first, just like we planned. Mary nodded. Remember, do not try to fight them like a normal space battle. Hit them hard, then run. Make them chase you. Keep them confused. Understood, Admiral. Razor Squadron, out. Alex turned to his crew. There were only 12 ships in his squadron, all of them small and fast. They were like gnats compared to the massive Korthak vessels, but gnats could still bite. Helm, take us toward the enemy fleet. Full speed. The Razor and its 11 sister ships accelerated toward the Korthak armada. Alex watched the distance close on his screen. 5 million kilometers. 4 million. 3 million. Sir, the enemy ships are moving toward us, reported Lieutenant Kim. They are maintaining formation, just like the reports said they would. Alex smiled grimly. That is exactly what we want them to do. Weapons, prepare to fire. The Korthak ships began launching smaller vessels, each one still larger than a human destroyer. These fighter craft moved in perfect coordination, like a school of fish in space. 2 million kilometers in closing, announced the helmsman. Fire all weapons. Alex commanded. The Razor unleashed everything it had. Missiles, energy beams, and kinetic rounds streaked toward the Korthak fleet. The other ships in the squadron did the same. But instead of aiming at the massive bioships, they targeted the smaller fighter craft. The Korthak fighters exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Their formation wavered as dozens of them were destroyed in the first volley. This was not what they had expected. "Hard to port, full speed," Alex ordered. "Take us around the asteroid belt." The human ships scattered in different directions, each one moving at maximum speed. The Korthak fighters tried to follow, but they were designed for coordinated group attacks, not individual pursuit. "Sir, we got 47 fighters in that first attack," reported the weapons officer. "The enemy formation is breaking up to chase us." Alex nodded. "Perfect. Communications. Signal the other squadrons. Phase 1 is complete." On the bridge of the U.East Defiance, Admiral Rodriguez watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Alex's squadron had done exactly what they were supposed to do. Instead of the massive fleet engagement that the Korthak expected, they were being drawn into a dozen smaller battles. "Admiral, Captain Miller is reporting in from the Mars Defense Zone," said her communications officer. Captain Doug Miller's face appeared on the screen. He was aboard the Hughes Hammer, leading the Mars Defense Fleet. "Admiral, we have 30 Korthak bioships heading our way. They look angry." "Are your ships ready, Doug?" "More than ready, Admiral. We have a surprise waiting for them." Mary knew what Doug meant. The Mars Defense Fleet consisted of older ships that had been modified in ways that would shock the Korthak. They looked like normal warships, but they were actually flying bombs. "Good hunting, Captain Miller." Doug's ship closed the communication channel and turned to face the approaching Korthak vessels. The enemy ships were massive, their organic hulls pulsing with alien energy. They fired their weapons in perfect coordination, creating a wall of energy that would have destroyed any normal fleet. But Doug's ships were not normal. They had been stripped of everything except engines, weapons, and explosive charges. They moved in unpredictable patterns, accelerating and turning in ways that made no tactical sense. "All ships, execute plan." "Chaos," Doug commanded over the fleet communication channel. The human ships suddenly scattered in random directions. Some flew straight up, others dove toward Mars, and a few actually flew directly at the Korthak fleet. The enemy vessels tried to adjust their formation, but they had never faced an enemy that moved without any apparent strategy, ramming speed. Doug ordered his own ship. The Hughes Hammer accelerated directly toward the largest Korthak bioship. The alien vessel fired everything it had, but Doug's ship was small and fast. Energy beams missed by meters as the Hammer weaved through the defensive fire. 10 seconds to impact," announced the helmsman. "All hands, abandon ship," Doug ordered. "Escape pods, launch now." The bridge crew ran for the escape pods as the Hammer closed the final distance to the Korthak ship. Doug stayed at his station, his hand on the detonation control. "This is for Earth," he said quietly, and pressed the button. The Hughes Hammer exploded against the hull of the Korthak bioship. But this was not a normal explosion. The ship had been packed with every type of explosive weapon that human engineers could design. Chemical explosives, nuclear charges, and experimental energy weapons all detonated at the same time. The massive alien vessel shuddered and began to break apart. Pieces of organic hull drifted away into space as the bioship died. All around the Mars Defense Zone, other human ships were doing the same thing. They rammed into Korthak vessels, exploded in the middle of enemy formations, and generally caused chaos wherever they went. On the surface of Mars, Colonel Jim Turner watched the battle through his periscope. His ground forces were dug into positions that had been prepared for months. But these were not normal defensive positions. "Sir, Several Korthik bioships are landing near Sector 7, reported Major Lisa Park. Jim nodded. Let them land. We want them on the ground. The Korthik landing craft touched down on the Martian surface and began releasing their soldiers. Thousands of insect-like creatures poured out of the ships, each one the size of a large dog with razor-sharp claws and mandibles. They advanced toward the human positions in perfect formation, just like they had on 17 other worlds. But, as they crossed the open ground, Jim's trap was revealed. Detonate the mines, Jim ordered. The Martian surface erupted in a series of explosions. But these were not normal anti-personnel mines. Human engineers had buried everything from simple explosive charges to chemical weapons to devices that created blinding flashes of light and deafening sounds. The Korthik soldiers were thrown into confusion. Their formation broke apart as individual creatures tried to avoid the explosions. Some fled back toward their ships, others scattered in random directions, and a few actually began fighting each other. Now we hit them, Jim said calmly. All units, open fire. Human soldiers emerged from underground bunkers and began shooting at the confused Korthak forces. They used weapons that fired solid bullets, launched explosive shells, and sprayed clouds of chemical irritants. The aliens had energy shields, but the shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not physical projectiles. In space, Dr. Sandra Lee was monitoring the battle from her research station. She was recording everything, looking for patterns in how the Korthak responded to human tactics. Interesting, she said to her assistant, Dr. Kevin White. The Korthak are trying to adapt to our tactics, but they keep getting confused. Why's that? Kevin asked. Sandra pointed to her analysis screen. Because we are not using tactics. We are just doing random things and hoping they work. The Korthik intelligence is designed to find patterns and counter them. But there are no patterns to find. Is that good or bad? Sandra smiled. It means we are winning the first round. But the Korthik are fast learners. They will figure out how to deal with chaos eventually. The first day of battle ended with the Korthak fleet in confusion. They had expected to fight in normal space. Battle, and instead, found themselves scattered across the solar system, chasing human ships that refused to fight fair. But Sandra was right. The Korthik were learning. Tomorrow would be different. Major Susan Clark floated in zero gravity inside the captured Korthik bioship. The air smelled like rotting meat and chemicals that made her eyes water. Behind her, 12 human Marines moved through the organic corridors with their weapons. Ready. This place gives me the creeps, whispered Sergeant Mike Johnson, holding his rifle tightly. The walls around them pulsed like they were inside a giant heart. Stay focused, Susan replied through her helmet radio. Remember, these aliens have never fought humans in close combat before. That gives us an advantage. They had been moving through the ship for 20 minutes, using cutting tools to burn through sealed doorways. The Korthik had never expected enemies to actually board their vessels. Most alien species tried to destroy the bioships from the outside. Contact ahead, called out Private Amy Davis from the front of the group. 3 Korthik soldiers moving toward us. Susan moved forward to see. The Korthak warriors were unlike anything in the battle reports. They walked on 6 legs like giant insects, with sharp claws and mandibles that could cut through metal. Their bodies were covered in natural armor that could stop energy weapons. Remember what we practiced, Susan said quietly. Bullets first, then explosives. The Marines opened fire with their assault rifles. The Korthik were surprised by the primitive weapons. Their energy shields were useless against solid bullets. The creatures made high-pitched screaming sounds as the bullets tore through their armor. One of the Korthik tried to charge at the humans, but Private Davis threw a grenade that exploded in the narrow corridor. The creature was thrown against the wall and did not get back up. That was too easy, said Sergeant Johnson. Susan nodded. They expected us to use energy weapons like every other species. They have no defense against gunpowder and metal bullets. Meanwhile, on the moon, General Frank Lewis was proving that humans could fight in ways that the Korthik had never imagined. His forces had abandoned the surface bases and moved into the underground tunnel system that miners had built over the past 50 years. Sir, the Korthik have landed over 2,000 soldiers on the surface, reported Captain Janet Kim through the radio. They are searching for our main base. Frank smiled as he looked at the tunnel map on his wall. Let them search. While they are looking for us on the surface, we will attack them from below. The human soldiers moved through the tunnels like ghosts. They would emerge from hidden entrances, attack a small group of Korthak warriors, then disappear back underground before reinforcements could arrive. Team 3, report, Frank said into his radio. We just hit a group of 20 Korthik near Landing Zone Alpha, came the reply from Lieutenant Carl Ross. Use the sonic weapons like you suggested, General. The noise made them panic and run in different directions. Frank nodded with satisfaction. Dr. Sandra Lee had discovered that the Korthik use sound to coordinate with each other. Loud, chaotic noises disrupted their ability to work together. Team 5, what is your status? We are setting up the light show near Landing Zone Beta, answered Sergeant Julie Murphy. Should be ready in 10 minutes. The light show was another human innovation. They had set up powerful strobe lights that flashed in random patterns. The Korthik eyes were sensitive to changing light, and the flashing made them confused and sick. Above Earth's atmosphere, Captain Janet Kim was leading a squadron of converted cargo ships toward a group of Korthik biovessels. Her ships looked like normal freight carriers, but they were packed with explosives and controlled by remote pilots. All ships maintain formation, Janet said over the radio. Make them think we are just cargo vessels trying to escape. The Korthik fleet had learned to recognize human warships after 3 days of fighting, but they ignored civilian craft. This was exactly what Janet was counting on. Distance to target, 5,000 kilometers, reported her navigation officer. Perfect. All ships, arm your weapons. The cargo ships suddenly accelerated toward the Korthak fleet. By the time the aliens realized what was happening, it was too late. The human ships crashed into the biovessels and exploded with tremendous force. Direct hits on 4 enemy ships, called out the weapons officer. Enemy formation is breaking apart. But Janet's real target was not the ships themselves. Each cargo vessel had been loaded with a different type of weapon. One carried chemical explosives, another had electromagnetic pulse devices, and a third released clouds of metal chaff that confused enemy sensors. Mission accomplished, Janet reported to Admiral Rodriguez. The enemy fleet cannot coordinate their attacks anymore. In his laboratory on Earth, Dr. Carl Ross was making an important discovery. He had been studying the Korthik prisoners that human forces had captured during the boarding actions. Dr. White, look at this, Carl called to his assistant. They were watching a Korthak warrior through a reinforced window. The creature was sitting in the corner of its cell, making no sound or movement. What am I looking at? Asked Dr. Kevin White. This warrior has been separated from the main Korthak fleet for 6 hours. Watch what happens when I play recorded sounds from other Korthik. Carl pressed a button and the cell filled with clicking and buzzing sounds that the Korthak used to communicate. The prisoner immediately became active, moving around the cell and trying to respond to the sounds. Now watch this, Carl said, and played a recording of human music mixed with random electronic noise. The Korthak warrior became agitated, making distress sounds and hitting the walls of its cell. After a few minutes, it collapsed and stopped moving. The hive-mind connection, Kevin said with understanding. When they cannot communicate properly with the group, they become helpless. Exactly. And if we can disrupt their communication on a large scale, their entire fleet will fall apart. Colonel Karen Bell was discovering the same thing in her aerial battles above Earth. She led a squadron of modified fighter aircraft that used maneuvers no sane pilot would attempt. "Gold Leader, this is Gold 3, came a voice over her radio. "The Korthak fighters are trying to copy our flight patterns." Karen smiled inside her helmet. "Then it is time to show them something new. Gold Squadron, execute pattern Crazy 8. The human fighters suddenly began flying in impossible patterns. They dove straight down, then pulled up at the last second. They flew sideways, backwards, and in spirals that would kill most alien pilots. The Korthak fighters tried to follow, but their pilots were not trained for this kind of flying. Several enemy craft crashed into each other, while others spun out of control and fell toward Earth's surface. "Gold Leader, the enemy formation is completely broken," reported Gold 3. "They cannot maintain group coordination when we fly. Like this. Good. Now hit them with the psychological warfare package." Karen's fighters began broadcasting on all frequencies at once. They played human rock music, emergency sirens, children singing, and air raid warnings, all mixed together. The cacophony filled the radio spectrum and made it impossible for the Korthak to communicate. Major Dan Hayes was coordinating the psychological warfare campaign from his command center deep underground. He had speakers, radio transmitters, and video projectors aimed at every Korthak position on Earth. "Sir, we are ready to begin Phase 2 of the Mind War," reported his communications officer. "Begin transmission," Dan ordered. Across the planet, every piece of human technology began broadcasting at once. Television stations played horror movies. Radio stations played jazz, classical, rock, and country music simultaneously. Emergency broadcast systems sent out contradictory warnings and instructions. The effect on the Korthak was immediate and devastating. The creatures were used to clear, organize communication. The flood of random human culture overloaded their ability to process information. "Sir, we are getting reports from all fronts," said his assistant. "Korthak ground forces are retreating to their ships. Some of them appear to be fighting each other." Dan nodded grimly. "The hive mind is breaking down. When they cannot communicate clearly, they start acting as individuals instead of as a group. Is that good for us?" "Very good. Individual Korthak are dangerous, but they are not nearly as dangerous as a coordinated swarm." As the fourth day of battle ended, the human forces had achieved something that no other species had managed. They had not just survived the Korthak attack, they had actually begun to win. But Dr. Sandra Lee was still worried. She sent a message to all human commanders warning them that the Korthak were adaptive. They would learn from their defeats and change their tactics. The real test would come tomorrow, when the aliens tried to fight back using everything they had learned about human warfare. Admiral Bob Foster stood on the bridge of the U.E.'s Victory, watching the largest Korthak bioship on his main screen. The massive vessel was 3 times bigger than any other ship in the enemy fleet. Intelligence reports said this was the command organism, the brain of the entire Korthak swarm. "Sir, all human fleets are in position," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Paul Green. "We have ships approaching from 17 different directions." Bob nodded. "And the enemy expects us to attack from one direction, like every other species has done." For 5 days, the Korthak had been learning human tactics. They had started to adapt to the chaos and unpredictability. But humans had one more surprise that no alien species had ever tried. "Communications. Patch me through to all fleet commanders," Bob ordered. Within seconds, he was connected to every human ship in the solar system. Captains, majors, colonels, and admirals looked back at him from dozens of screens. "Today we end this war. Bob said simply. Remember, we are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting to show the galaxy that some enemies can be defeated. Captain Jones, report on the biological weapon. Captain Diane Jones appeared on one of the screens. She was aboard a medical research ship that had been converted for combat. Admiral, the weapon is ready. Dr. Ross has modified human flu viruses to attack Korthic biology. It will not kill them, but it will make them very sick. And the psychological weapon package? Major Dan Hayes spoke from his underground command center. All ready, sir. We have every piece of human art, music, and literature stored in broadcast form. We can flood their communication systems with everything from Shakespeare to heavy metal music. Bob smiled grimly. Then let us begin. All ships, commence final attack. The human fleet attacked the Korthak command ship from every possible angle. But this was not like the chaotic battles of the previous days. This time, the humans were organized and coordinated. They had learned from watching how the Korthic adapted to their tactics. Captain Greg Thompson led the first wave of attackers. His squadron of fast destroyers came in low and fast, firing everything they had at the command ship's defensive weapons. The Korthic returned fire with their energy weapons, destroying 3 human ships immediately. But the real attack came from above. Colonel Karen Bell's fighter squadron dove straight down from above the solar plane, coming from a direction that the Korthak had never seen an attack before. Her pilots flew through the enemy defensive fire with the same crazy maneuvers they had used all week. Gold leader to all ships, Karen said over the radio. Beginning psychological attack now. Her fighters began broadcasting human music at maximum volume. But this was not random noise like before. They played specific songs that Dr. Ross had chosen for their effect on Korthic hearing. The aliens used high-pitched sounds to coordinate, and human bass guitars completely disrupted their ability to communicate. Direct hit on their communication array, reported Gold 3. The command ship is going silent. Inside the command ship, Captain Janet Kim was leading a boarding party unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Her Marines were not just carrying weapons. They were carrying speakers, computer systems, and biological warfare devices. Set up the virus dispersal system here, Janet ordered as her team moved through the organic corridors. And get those speakers working. I want every Korthic on this ship to hear human civilization. Sergeant Mike Johnson was setting up a powerful sound system in what appeared to be the ship's central nervous system. The walls around them pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that looked like alien thoughts. What exactly are we playing for them, Captain? Mike asked. Everything, Janet replied. Classical music, rock and roll, jazz, children's nursery rhymes, comedy shows, news broadcasts, and poetry readings. All at the same time. That will drive them crazy. That is the point. The Korthic mind works by organizing everything into patterns. Human culture has no pattern they can understand. On the surface of Mars, General Frank Lewis was coordinating the final ground assault. But instead of attacking the Korthic positions directly, his forces were doing something that confused even the human commanders. Sir, are you sure about this plan? Asked Captain Lisa Park. We're just going to walk up to them and start talking. Frank nodded. The Korthic are used to fighting. They are not used to negotiating. Dr. White discovered that individual Korthic can be reasoned with when they are separated from the hive mind. The human soldiers approached the Korthic positions with their weapons lowered. They carried speakers that played soft, calming music and white flags that showed they wanted to talk. Attention Korthic forces, Frank said into a loudspeaker. We wish to discuss terms for your surrender. The alien warriors were confused. In their entire history, no enemy had ever offered them a chance to surrender. They had always fought until one side was completely destroyed. We know you can understand our language, Frank continued. Your command ship is being destroyed. Your communication with the hive mind is being disrupted. You can choose to die here, or you can choose to live. Several Korthak warriors dropped their weapons and approached the human lines. Without the constant mental connection to their swarm, they were capable of individual thought and decision-making. Dr. Lisa Young was monitoring the psychological effects of the human assault from her research station. She watched as Korthak formations across the solar system began to break apart. "It is working," she reported to Admiral Foster. "The combination of biological weapons, psychological warfare, and communication disruption is causing a complete breakdown of their hive mind. How long before they recover?" "They will not recover, Admiral. Once the connection is broken, individual Korthak cannot reconnect to the group mind. They become independent creatures. And independent creatures can choose to stop fighting." Exactly. The battle for the command ship reached its climax when Captain Diane Jones deployed her biological weapon. The modified human virus spread through the ship's air system, making every Korthak on board sick and disoriented. Combined with the constant noise of human culture and the disruption of their communication systems, the effect was devastating. The massive bioship began to drift helplessly in space as its crew became unable to function as a coordinated unit. "Admiral Foster, this is Captain Jones," came the report from inside the command ship. "The vessel is under our control. The Korthak crew has surrendered." Bob felt a moment of triumph, but he knew the war was not over yet. "What about the rest of their fleet?" "Sir, we are getting surrender signals from Korthak ships throughout the system," reported Lieutenant Commander Green. "Without their command ship, they cannot coordinate their attacks. And the individual ships? Most of them are requesting permission to withdraw from the solar system. A few are asking for asylum on human worlds." Bob was amazed. "Asylum? They want to stay here?" Dr. Young's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, without the hive mind, many Korthak discover that they do not actually want to be conquerors. Some of them are asking if they can learn about human culture." 3 days later, Ambassador Zethka floated in his environmental suit aboard the UES Victory. He was there to formally recognize humanity's victory and to make an unprecedented offer. "Admiral Foster, the Galactic Council has never seen anything like this," Zethka said through his translator. "In our entire history, no species has ever defeated the Korthak swarm." Bob sat across from the alien ambassador in the ship's conference room. Around the table sat the other human commanders who had led the successful defense. "What made the difference was not our weapons or our technology," Bob replied. "It was our willingness to fight in ways that no civilized species would consider." "Yes," Zethka agreed. "You used biological weapons, psychological warfare, and tactics that we would consider barbaric. And those barbaric tactics saved not just Earth, but probably dozens of other worlds that the Korthak would have attacked next." Zethka's tentacles waved in what humans had learned was a gesture of agreement. "This is why the Council wishes to make you an offer. We want Earth to lead the new Galactic Defense Force. Us? Lead the galaxy's military? Who else? You are the only species that has proven capable of defeating an enemy that adapts to conventional warfare." Bob looked around the table at his fellow commanders. They had started this war as defenders of one small planet. Now they were being asked to defend the entire galaxy. "There is one condition," Bob said finally. "We do this our way. No rules about honorable combat or civilized warfare. When we fight to win." "Agreed," Zethka replied immediately. "The galaxy has learned that sometimes survival is more important than honor." 6 months later, Dr. Lisa Young stood in front of her first class at the new Interspecies Military Academy. Her students were a mix of humans and aliens from dozens of different worlds. Today we begin your education in human military tactics, she announced. The first lesson is this. There is no such thing as an unbeatable enemy. There are only enemies that have not yet met the right tactics. A young alien officer raised a tentacle. Professor Young, are human tactics really superior to traditional galactic warfare? Lisa smiled. Human tactics are not superior. They are different. For thousands of years, civilized species have fought wars using rules and honor. Codes. Humans learned to fight wars using whatever methods would ensure survival. But surely, there must be limits to what is acceptable in warfare. There is only one limit that matters, Lisa replied. You must be able to live with yourself after you win. Everything else is negotiable. She turned to look out the window. At Earth, which was now the headquarters of the Galactic Defense Force. In space around the planet, ships from dozens of worlds trained alongside human vessels. The Korthak swarm is defeated, but there are other threats in the galaxy. Pirates, warlords, and rogue artificial intelligences. They will all learn what the Korthak learned. What is that, Professor? Lisa's smile became grim. That humans do not fight fair. And when the survival of civilization is at stake, fighting fair is the fastest way to lose. In the outer rim of the galaxy, long-range sensors detected new Korthak scouts approaching a colony world. But when they saw the distinctive energy signatures of human tactical doctrine being used by the local defense forces, the scouts turned around and fled. For the first time in their species' history, the Korthak had learned to fear an enemy, and that enemy was spreading its knowledge throughout the galaxy, one world at a time.